Welcome to Open Arms, an honest conversation about firearms. Hey everyone, I'm your host Brian Lockerman, and we have Nikki Wesley on the controls today again. How you doing, Nikki?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good. It's gonna be a good show today, Nikki. I tell you why. I was able to attend the Riley Gaines seminar at Godspeak Church a few weeks back. And I heard my next guest speak at the seminar, and the things he was talking about was so interesting and so right up our alley with what we're doing with our show. So today, I have psychiatrist Mark McDonald on the show. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Great to be here, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, Mark, when I saw you and I saw your presentation, you were hitting some points that always were very interesting to me, and also things that I'm also, incorporating in my show, Open Arms, because we do focus on gun safety, family values, and the Second Amendment, but we do hit the mental health issue on gun ownership as well. However, there's more to it than just gun ownership. There's a lot to the mental health situation these days. And you were talking about, all different avenues. And again, I'd like to talk to you more about that. I have a lot of questions for you. So why don't you just give the people at least a little overview of who you are and what you do?
I am a psychiatrist, which is a medical doctor, as opposed to a psychologist who is a therapist
Did I
with
say
an
that right?
academic degree. And you said it correctly.
Thank you.
Many do not. I'm just expanding to make it more clear to your listeners that I am a medical doctor. So
Okay.
I have medical school training. I've worked with patients in hospitals. I've completed a residency. I am no different than the man who checks your heart and lungs when you go to the doctor, or the woman who delivers your baby. However, my specialty is in mental illness. So I diagnose and treat mental illness, not physical illness. And I do it in adults, adolescents, and children because I have a subspecialty fellowship training in child and adolescent psychiatry.
Wow.
That is my occupation. I have also begun doing a lot of writing and speaking in the last few years, especially on subjects and topics pertaining to the mental wellness and the mental illness of young people since the pandemic lockdowns.
Oh, yeah.
That has been a huge focus for me because I care about the health of our young people here in the United States. And of course, I care about our country in the macro. But I am a professional physician. I am not a professional commentator. I have written a couple of books, United States of Fear and Freedom from Fear, so I am now a
wow.
published author. And I do have a Substack as well that I publish weekly called Dissident MD, because now in the United States, if you offer a differing opinion, you are a de facto dissident.
Are those books available still?
They are available. If you
Okay.
go to my website, dissidentmd.com, you can find my books.
Okay.
You can also find my Substack and also links to my Facebook and my Twitter accounts.
Right. Nikki, you'll put that up on the show, right?
Everything, all your links will be listed on the description below. So all
Yeah.
your websites, links, everyone can find you. Just
Perfect,
click the
perfect.
description.
Now, Mark, let me ask you this. This is like a general question. In your years of practice, have you seen an increase in mental illness?
Oh,
over the years?
huge.
Right?
It's always been increasing. It's the acceleration
Yeah.
of the increase that is alarming to me. I saw an increase way before 2020 in autism, in social awkwardness that's not autistic, but maybe social media induced awkwardness in young people, anxiety towards school, dating, families, independence. That's been present, but after 2020, oh my goodness, how that
Exactly.
exploded.
Now, why do you think that started? Why is it? Now, here's my opinion. I mean, this is just my thought. This is why I incorporated family values in the show Open Arms. It seems like family values is getting to be a lost cause, and kids aren't having that connection with their parents and their counselors and things like that. Is that part of the problem?
It is a problem. It's a huge problem in the urban areas of the United States. I have noticed in the last 12 months that there's a bifurcation of illness and wellness in this country that's not state dependent. It's not really even entirely right left, Republican, liberal. It's really more urban rural. And I believe that the cause of it is the disappearance of traditional American values in urban America.
That's it. That's it right there. That is why I incorporated that on the show, because it's like a lost cause. Okay, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but what is your take on medication? Before you answer that, I've had experienced a friend of mine okay, who's been under psychiatric treatment, okay. I got to really see the difference of what his medication would do to him when we took a trip in a car. When we left, he was not on his meds. He was just like a vegetable, just sitting in the seat, just like all like, "Buh," you know. So we got to our first stop, and he then pulled out his pharmacy, you know, and started popping all his pills. Well, the difference in his personality, he went from this very low to this extremely erratic, high craziness. Now, I don't think that's the solution. What's your thoughts on that?
It's not a simple question and it doesn't have a simple answer. It's a
Sure.
tool. It's
Hmm.
like saying, well, what do you think about guns? I mean, this guy protected himself with a gun the other day when these burglars entered his home and saved his family's life. But you know what? The next day, his neighbor committed suicide and shot his wife to death. That makes guns bad, right?
Exactly.
Well, it depends on how they're used.
Hmm.
A gun is not a good or a bad thing, it's a tool. In
100%.
the hands of a conscientious and trained human being, it can be life saving. It can also be murderous. So, medications are the same thing. They're not inherently good or bad. The one thing I would say, though, that I've noticed more recently that has caused me to change my opinion about how medications are prescribed is that I have lost faith and confidence in the honesty of the manufacturers of medications in how they advertise them and how they describe them and
Yeah.
how they recommend them. That is something that I never thought of until about 3 years ago. So now when I recommend a medication, I don't recommend it based on what I hear from the pharmaceutical corporation or even from what I see published in The Lancet or other high value medical journals because they are full of lies. So I have to do a lot more research to determine on my own whether this medication is A, efficacious, that is, does it work, and B, safe.
Exactly. Now, do you think a lot of doctors out there just I don't know if the right term is laziness. They just get a client in. Okay, here you need this pill, this pill, this pill. Call me in the morning. I mean, it kind of seems that way for some people. Is that
I
correct?
have lost confidence in the medical profession and the institutions. As an example, in the last 18 months or so, the American Medical Association has publicly announced that its formal stated policy that they voted on and ratified in committee is to no longer have birth certificate sexes of M or F on the document, but only an X. They support that. That is the American
Really?
Medical Association. So that is an institution that ostensibly represents American physicians. Now, it doesn't really, only about 16% of
Mhm.
doctors subscribe to it. But putting that aside, all the doctors in this country pretend to support the AMA, at least in principle, even if they don't pay as membership
Yeah.
participants. And these doctors, they are simply taking what they get from these institutions and from the federal government and blindly following the recommendations, no matter how irrational they are. Masks, talk about irrational, most doctors supported them. Injecting gene therapy, untested, unsafe
Mm.
drugs and toxins into the body of all of their patients, 80% or so of doctors supported that too. Completely irrational. And I'm not even using this as a political argument. I'm just saying logically it doesn't make sense to do those things without first investigating them, and they're not. So doctors, in my opinion, most of them are no longer thinking critically or analytically. They are simply operating in a herd mentality,
Ex-
just like the rest of the
yes.
population. You know why, Brian? Because doctors are no better than anyone else. They have the
Yeah.
same human frailties as you and me.
Exactly. Now, for a person now who needs treatment, how do you avoid a doctor like that? How do you avoid that? What do you do?
So people often ask me, what do you do when you meet someone who has a differing opinion, let's say about the pandemic?
Hmm.
How do you assess for whether or not they can carry on a conversation, maybe change their mind? This is what I always tell people: assess for curiosity. Find out if that person is open to thinking differently. With physicians, what I recommend is when you call the office to assess for whether this is a rational doctor, ask a few basic questions to see what the office's position is. As an example, a friend of mine recently called his ophthalmologist. He hadn't seen him in years, had no idea what this guy's position was on pandemic, this and that. And the secretary said, "Oh, be sure to bring your mask with you." He said, "Excuse me?" This is literally just a couple weeks ago,
Really?
just recently. And he said, "I'm sorry, bring a mask. Is Dr. X requiring his patients to wear masks?" "Oh, absolutely. We're trying to keep everyone safe." You know what his next comment was? "Thank you very much. cancel my appointment. I will let you know where to forward my records.
Good for him.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
These are the
Nikki?
questions to ask. How does Dr. X feel about unvaccinated patients? And if
Mhm,
the answer is,
mhm.
well, to each his own, that's a pretty good answer. I would rather hear, oh, he's opposed to it, but you're never going to get that because that's a dangerous answer. They
Yeah.
could get attacked by the FBI and have their bank accounts removed. But if the answer is, oh, he strongly supports all of the current guidelines from the CDC, including the 16th booster and the annual booster that's coming out, then you say, thank you very much, cancel my appointment.
Exactly.
And I really encourage people to ask these questions up front. Don't
That
get
is.
enmeshed in an office with a doctor and then
Mhm.
find out after you've got all this money and time invested that this is not the right doctor for you. It's like
Yeah.
what we say to women at the gas pump. You see a weird guy milling around, approaching you, asking for money. Don't wait until he has his hands around your neck. Turn and face him and say strongly, that's close enough.
Uh-huh.
And if he keeps approaching, now you know he's nothing but trouble.
There you go.
That's when you pull your gun.
That's great for the audience out there too. When you do try to find a doctor, the questions, ask questions, and that makes a
Ask
difference.
questions
Yes,
and
yes.
don't be intimidated.
Yeah.
Be strong and assertive. Be respectful, polite, but assert your rights.
Mhm.
Assert your rights as a patient. You don't have to put up with nonsense from a doctor.
No.
Irrational nonsense is going to harm you. You are there for you. You are not there to appease a corporation or to do your good job as a citizen. You're there to get help. And if you don't think this man or woman can help you, walk away right now.
That's it. That's very, very well said. Another thing, I think you tapped into a little bit at the seminar. You talked a little bit about mass shooters and mental health and things like that. And again, I go back to our show and what we're doing with the mental health issue and gun ownership. We've actually are partnering up with a company called Walk the Talk America. Are you familiar with them?
I'm
at all?
not.
Okay, I'll give you their information and stuff like that. Now, Walk the Talk America, what they do is they put these cards in a lot of manufacturer boxes of guns when you buy a gun brand new. And it talks about mental health and gun ownership. And there's actually a confidential survey that's on their website that you can take to see where you are, as far as your mental status and things like that. And they have a great board of directors. It's one of those things that we're trying to help in that area. What's your thoughts about the whole gun ownership, mental health, and you talked about the mass shooters and things like that?
This is a really difficult subject to inform policy on
Mm-hmm.
because it can be so easily corrupted and used against us. This is my
You're
main
right.
concern with mental health. Now, I know you're coming from it from a good position, an honest one, and a sincere one, but a lot of people are not.
Exactly.
There have already been laws put into place throughout the country, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, where a aggrieved, and I'm going to say spouse, it's usually a wife or a girlfriend, can call the police and say, I just feel very unsafe around my boyfriend or husband because she's angry.
Yeah.
And then he can be either arrested or put into an immediate red flag removal of gun ownership rights without due process, even though he hasn't had any real mental illness or mental health issues. And this is being abused all over the country. And it can
We
be
see it
abused
all
by
the time.
politicians as well. So I'm very uncomfortable with even the laws we have now. For example, I worked at a inpatient psychiatric facility for a number of years while I was moonlighting and training down in Southern California. And there were patients who had been called out by an aggrieved lover or a spouse, usually men, although it could be women,
Mm-hmm.
and they were locked up on what's called a 72-hour hold, which is easily applied by any social worker, physician, or police officer. It's called a 5150 in the state of California.
Yeah.
And if that 5150 is not legally overruled, which is virtually impossible to do, that person loses his gun rights for a specific period of time. It's at least a year, and it can be extended indefinitely at the whim of a judge. And it's almost impossible to get those rights back. And anybody can be, as we called it, 5150'd. Hundreds of people would come in and out of the hospital every day. I don't even know why I'm here. And we'd do the background and the checks. We'd find out, well, the neighbor just didn't like the fact that the radio was blasting. So he called and said, I think this guy's going to hurt himself. And there he goes, off to the hospital.
Uh-huh. That's the problem. I mean, where's the
Big
guidelines?
problem.
It is.
And I don't pretend to know how to adopt guidelines. I'm not a legislator,
Mhm.
but I'm just issuing this caution because even though I do believe that people who are mentally ill should not own firearms, how do you define mental illness? And how do you define its chronicity, its acuteness? Is depression a mental illness? Well, it is, but is it grounds for removing a firearm? Well, almost 60% of the population suffers from a clinically applicable major depressive episode at some point in their lives. Does that mean that during those 2 weeks they shouldn't have a gun? Their whole life? About a third of those people have a repeat episode within 10 years. Do we wait for 10 years to give them their gun? How do I don't know how to. This is a very, very difficult.
It's also difficult because it's not, you can't see the depression. You can't see it. It's not a visible disability, if you will. You know, you can't see it. So anyone can say they're having issues just to get their medication even. Like, you don't know.
That's right.
You can't see it.
It's a tough one. It really
It
is.
is. It's
And
like a gray area.
you're right, and this is one of our toughest points on our show is working through this. Believe it or not, the safety thing, it's nothing. The family values in it, but the mental health issue is really a one that needs a lot of work.
Well, I would just offer that, and this sounds kind of dispassionate and cold, but if you just look at raw numbers, the number of deaths that are accrued and calculated and counted every year through firearms, through the unlawful use, criminal use of firearms, robberies and murders, not by mentally ill people, but by criminals, far exceeds the number of deaths that are either suicides or homicides by one-off mentally ill people who go crazy. You know, mass shootings account for a very small number of actual gun deaths in the United States. Of course, as you know, Stalin was famous for saying, 1 or 2 deaths is a tragedy. You know, 1 million deaths is a statistic. So we don't really make our laws based upon statistics. We make them based upon single stories that are painful, and that's a big problem. Our laws should never, ever, ever be driven by emotion and by a tragedy. They should be driven by what's in the public interest and the greater good, knowing that every law is going to cause some deaths. We have a speed limit law. 55 miles per hour. It used to be 65. I guess now it is. In some cases, 70. It goes up and down depending on gas prices and politics. We could easily lower our death rate by making our national speed limit 40 miles per hour. I could tell you exactly how many deaths we could save every year. We could reduce it to 20. We could make it 0 miles per hour, and we'd have no deaths. But at what cost?
Exactly.
So you see, there's always a trade-off in public policy, and so we can't simply eliminate all constitutional rights for gun ownership on constitutional grounds, obviously, but also just on practical grounds. To save 17 lives, but you wind up losing 10,000 because all the people that could have protected themselves from homicide by criminals no longer can. You see how complicated this issue is?
It is very, very complicated. You're right about that. One thing you did say, you say you specialize in adolescents. Is that what you
I
said?
work with children and adolescents as a subspecialty, but I do see all ages.
Okay, I understand it. Now, with working with adolescents like that, that's another thing. Again, with the gun ownership and everything, bringing a firearm into the home, and you have your child or your kid, and you may think it's a little bit mentally unstable or whatever. It seems that it keeps growing and growing and growing these days. We're always hearing this from parents and things like that about their child having this problem, that problem. And again, what can we do to try to stop this?
I can tell you one thing you can do right now if you have a child. Take your child out of government schools.
There you go.
Number one.
Right.
Homeschool your children. Now, there are some exceptions. There are great charter schools. There's occasionally a decent magnet public school, government school, or perhaps a good private school. Some Catholic schools are still okay. A lot of them are not. Even my high school, my alma mater, Loyola High School, here in Los Angeles, excellent school. It's now going woke. Diversity, equity, inclusion is now stuff that's coming out in their emails. I would never have expected that from a Jesuit school. So I just say, broadly speaking, take your kids out of government schools, homeschool them. That's the first thing and the most powerful step that you can take as a parent to save your child. The second thing I would suggest, and I never did this, never, until about 2.5, 3 years ago, if you have a child, meaning under 18, do not, under any circumstances, give your child a smartphone. None.
I 100%
No
agree
exceptions.
with that.
Give them a flip phone.
Absolutely.
They need to call for emergencies, which is what the immediate reflexive answer of mommy is. But what if my child needs a call in an emergency? Well, I never had even a flip phone when I was growing up.
Neither did I.
Neither did I.
Neighbors found a way to find my parents somehow, and they didn't use smoke signals. So give them a flip phone if you really want an emergency call option. But they have no reason or need to be carrying a computer in their pocket unsupervised. Would you give them access to a chainsaw or a power tool in your garage and say, hey, honey, just figure it out. I'll be upstairs. Call me if you need me. You supervise them. And when that tool is done, it gets locked up and put away. They are not allowed to touch it without your supervision. That should be a computer as well.
Yeah.
Kids should not have unrestricted access to laptops in their bedrooms. The computer should be in a public area of the house, screen open, not password
Hmm.
protected, and the parent should tell the child, every night I am going to review every single page that you watched and looked at and video. I'm warning you right now. You are on notice. That is how you protect your child.
I
That is
couldn't
how you
agree
save
more
them.
with that.
Yeah. That.
Because I've witnessed it. These kids are just sitting in their bedrooms on their phones. What do you think that's doing to their mental health?
Hmm.
On their phones, just scrolling. They
This
don't go
is how
outside
they
and
get into
play.
OnlyFans. This is how the patients, 11, 12, 13 years old, who post TikTok videos bopping around in their halter tops, and they
Hmm.
get 200,000 likes from God knows who.
Yeah.
The next day, they wind up meeting some 60-year-old guy with sunglasses in a creepy van next to Starbucks who's going to offer him a modeling job. Guess where that goes?
Oh yeah.
And then they get seduced onto OnlyFans, which is basically prostitution online.
Uh-huh.
And then they get into prostitution on the street from that. This is happening without parents' awareness because of smartphones and access
Oh
to
yeah.
the internet that's unsupervised.
It's an epidemic, and I tell you, it's because also too parents are just they're just checking out. They're not
It's a
paying.
babysitter. They use
Yeah.
it as a babysitter. But even these friends who, even if you don't, you can be as cautious as you can with the parents and the cell phones. But when they go to their friends' houses, they're on their friends' phones.
Well, this is
You
always
know?
the answer that parents give me. And I say, you
Yeah.
know what? This is harm reduction. You can't eliminate everything unless you want to move to a rural area, which
Mhm.
probably is a great idea,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, no
and
doubt.
work on a ranch. I strongly support that. Get out of
There
the
you go.
cities. The cities are a cesspool. But if you're
Yeah.
going to stay in the cesspool, at least eliminate the garbage down to
Uh-huh.
a minimum. The idea that, well, I can't protect from everything doesn't mean that you should protect from nothing. Don't give in and give up because you can't watch and protect your child all the time 24/7. That's not your job. Your
That's
job is to do the
true.
best you can. And if you're allowing your child to go to a government school and you're giving them a smartphone and you're giving them a laptop and a computer that they can access 24/7 without any supervision, you are failing.
Yep.
You are
Yeah,
failing as a
that's true.
parent. And I am not apologizing or giving any caveats for saying that you are abdicating your responsibilities as a parent if you allow your child to do those things.
There you go. And I tell parents too, have family dinners. Talk to your children. Ask them how their day was. What did they do today? What's going on? Is anybody bullying you in school or whatever? Have a conversation.
Great start.
That's what we did when we grew up. That's what my family was. Every night, family dinners. We talked about our day. My mom and dad were always interested in what we were doing and asked questions. And I don't see that happening as much these days.
It doesn't happen because
Yeah.
of all of the offline delivery services and
Mhm.
the online meal preparation kits and the cooks and the maids and the fast food and we're just going to come home later and eat leftovers.
Yeah.
This is also your responsibility as a parent. Your primary job is to raise your child into a good adult. And if you don't eat together, how are you going to keep in touch with your child? How are you going to train your child how to be calm, respectful, and patient in the midst of conversations that may not particularly interest him?
Yeah.
That's what you have to do as an adult. You have to sit there patiently. You don't just get up and walk away because the topic doesn't arouse your interest. You have to teach them table manners. You have to teach them how to interact in conversations on subjects that they know nothing about. There's a lot that goes on
yes,
there other
yes.
than just how was your day that is no longer happening. And that buttressing point, that foundational family unit reemergence 24 hours every single day is gone in most households.
I agree. What I've actually experienced too? I've actually experienced kids calling their parents by their first name.
Yes.
If my kid would be like, "Hey, Brian," I'd be like, "What did you say?" You know what I mean? It's like, come on, respect your mother and father. You don't call them by their first. I'm sorry.
I had a 17-year-old girl coming in with both of her parents about 3 months ago in my practice who scared her mother through a violent tantrum in a hotel room when she was, meaning the mother, was giving her a college tour up in Washington State. The mother locked herself in the bathroom until 4 in the morning because she couldn't feel safe around her daughter who was having a borderline crisis temper tantrum. The next day they come into my office, mother, father, daughter, and they describe this to me. And as I'm explaining to the parents exactly what they need to do, this girl needs to have X and Y and these restrictions, no cell phone. And the girl's, of course, she's absolutely furious. No adult has ever constrained her before. And her mother turns to her and says, "Honey, just please listen to the doctor. Listen to the doctor." She turns to her mother. It's worse than the first name thing, Brian. She turns to her mother. She rolls her eyes. She shakes her little bobbled head and she says, "Girl, please."
Oh, man.
This actually happened in my
Oh.
office. This is not a ghetto family. This family owns multiple properties in the valley. The father is an immigrant from Iran, very well educated, well worked, incredibly conservative family. And this girl is acting like a hood rat.
You know what, Mark? I don't. Do you remember the girl, Nikki? You probably remember this girl too, who was what'd she say? Catch me outside. How about that, or something like that?
Oh, she
Remember
was
her?
on
Okay.
Dr. Phil.
Cash me
Yeah.
outside, Dr.
Ca-
Phil.
yeah, Dr.
Okay.
Phil.
Okay. So right now she is making millions and millions of dollars just because of that. So what does that show other kids? Wow, if I'm like her, I could be in the same position as her. You know what I mean? And they promote it and they show it. I just saw something recent about her just not too long ago. How much money she's making over that being a total jackass to her parents.
Social influencer, which is sort of the umbrella term for all of this nonsense, bad behavior basically on the part of children, is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. And young kids know this, and they get this behavior reinforced through money, through cash rewards,
Yeah.
which is one of the most powerful rewards available other than drugs is money. And we, the adults, have allowed this. We have created an industry that pays children to act out. It's not that they go and steal things or they go and grab drugs. That used to be the way to act out, and that was their reward. Now we are actually paying them. We are supporting their bank accounts. We are giving them access to rental homes for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 a month where they film their act outs and then they make even more money by uploading them to TikTok.
Yeah.
We are doing this. We, the adults, are encouraging this. It is
I
our
know it.
fault. The next generation of kids is going to be our politicians, our doctors, our police, our fire, our nurses. How on earth are we going to survive
God
if
help
this
us.
is what we're going to be leading our country in the next 20 years?
God
It's a
help us.
nightmare.
Oh man. Yeah, you're right about that. Wow. I tell you, it is. It's just you see more and more of this stuff, and it's heartbreaking in a way too. You're seeing all this lost, family values and the social goodness. It seems like it's not there anymore.
I think this is a product also of absolutely ingrained pathologic narcissism. We have such a penchant now for placing a virtue on selfishness, on self-aggrandizement, on narcissism, on getting something for me at the expense of others. Cash Me Outside is a great example. That's a little narcissist in the making.
Oh yeah.
And we used to call that out as adults, as parents, even if it wasn't our child. We would say, shut your mouth. You're going to get a spanking. Go back to your parents and tell them what you did, or I will. That's how we kept kids in check. We don't do that anymore. We reward them. We pay them.
I know.
The more narcissistic they are, the more successful they are, the more likes they get, the more money they earn, the more acclaim they get. So we are feeding into this narcissistic machine through our social and economic structure, our social media structure, our general media structure. And I think this is a big failing as well. I have never seen this degree of personality disordered young people in history.
Yeah.
It's very scary, and it's not happening just accidentally. It is being encouraged. It is being fed.
No, I agree. I agree. there.
Entitlement.
Entitlement is a great word to use for people who don't know what perhaps narcissism means in a clinical sense. It is entitlement.
Yeah.
It is the feeling of you owe me something rather than I owe you something. The idea of my rights, and I don't mean constitutional rights, I mean my wants rights, my rights to a home, my rights to free schooling and medical care and an income. Those rights are more important than my responsibility to do good for the country and to produce so that I can get those things, I can earn those things.
Yeah.
And that's now evolved into a sense of entitlement about everything, about what I get at the store, my drink orders, about people listening to me, people applauding me, people giving me likes on Facebook. It's such a belly-gazing exercise that's ultimately empty and depressing and encourages horrible self-abuse, eating disorders with girls, drug abuse with boys, pornographic addictions, autistic behaviors, loneliness, getting married to an emoji or a virtual wife, which has now become very popular. in
Really?
Asia.
Oh yes, I taught Brian all about the AI trend.
Oh yeah, that's right. She made me actually do something like that. What
If you
was it?
want to see Brian act like an AI figure, go to our TikTok,
Yeah,
Open Arms TV.
she made me do something the other day, and I didn't know what I was even doing, but she made me look like a fool actually. But whatever. Anyhow, okay. So Mark, I want to go back again. You have some books. Can you get them on like Kindle and stuff like that too as well?
They are available on Kindle through Amazon. They're
Okay.
available on audiobooks through Amazon.
Okay.
They're available in paperback and in hardback. So basically every format other than Braille.
Very good.
Although, they have audio, so I guess that substitutes.
Yeah.
And you can find links to other sites where you can purchase them as well, like Conservative Reader or Barnes & Noble through my website,
All right.
which is dissidentmd.com. And that's where I have both of my books and links to the different purchasing sites, as well as my Substack column, which is also called Dissident MD, and my Facebook and Twitter pages.
Very good. I encourage everybody to go check that out and maybe read some of his books. Because what he's talking about and what he's doing so far, it's just been amazing stuff. And Nikki, she's been kindling lately, right?
Oh, I just downloaded the Kindle app. I always liked having a hard copy book in my hand.
Me too.
And I would never really went on the Kindle journey. But I started and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. You don't have to have a light. You
Yeah.
can read your book wherever you want. I love it.
Yeah, very, very good. Okay, so Mark, so what does the future hold? What are you thinking? I know it's a broad question, but
Any final thoughts?
what's your thought? Yeah, what's your thought? Where are we going?
So I vacillate day to day between excitement and despair.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to keep in mind what Dennis Prager, a man that I greatly admire and who offers a lot of wisdom on his radio show Monday through Friday here in Glendale, locally here in Los Angeles, says about optimism and pessimism, which is optimism and pessimism are really irrational and inappropriate positions, and they're unhelpful because being optimistic means things are going to turn out okay, so why bother? Being a pessimist means things are going to turn out like crap, so
Yeah.
why bother?
Yeah.
So the only real honorable and rational position to take is to fight,
Yeah.
is to address the problem at hand and to keep moving forward. That will also keep you from moving into despair or moving into mania. It will keep you occupied with the task at hand, and that's really all that we can do. So I try not to extrapolate into the future whether things will be good or bad, because it doesn't really matter what I think and how I feel. But what I'm noticing as far as a trend that I think is hopeful, and I mean rationally hopeful, not just praying for it to be hopeful, but I think actually has a hopeful sign, is that recently what James Lindsay, another wonderful, very very smart and wise man that I spoke with in DC just a week ago with America's Frontline Doctors, says in terms of the whole nutshell of the United States today, the American Maoist movement, which is kind of the umbrella under which I think all of our problems lie, is really a contemporary Maoism, meaning the invasion of communism into our country, but not along economic lines, along all these other artificial lines like race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, politics. That's how we're being divided and split off. I believe that movement, basically all the evil that's coming into our country now is under that movement. I think the leaders of that movement may have gone a bit too far through the transgender movement and the activism by going after our children through genital mutilation and chemical castration. Because Americans, they can unite under banners of let's save the environment, let's be racially friendly, because they largely, the liberals, not the leftists, but the liberals, they largely buy into things that sound good. And it's very non-specific. Environmental, what is it? It's being for the environment. Well, I'm for the environment. And then underneath all that language, you get these policies like take away your car, take away your stove, take away your refrigerator, triple taxes, gas prices, which of course impoverishes America. But that doesn't really hit home on a personal level to people at first. It's very delayed. But this transgender movement, this is hitting home because you're seeing and hearing stories of detransitioners, mostly women, who have had their healthy breasts cut off with scar tissue, rendered infertile, osteoporosis, suicide. These are women that will never have children, never be able to breastfeed, probably never have normal sexual functioning again. And they're telling their personal stories, which is revolting and horrifying to every American who is not on the full-on left. And at the same time, parents are now seeing the pornography, the pedophilia,
Oh, yeah.
the grooming going on in their schools, online, in books, and through Zoom cameras. Thank goodness we had Zoom in the last few years, the only silver lining of the school closures. And parents of all political stripes, they are disgusted, they are horrified, and they want nothing to do with it, no matter what language is used by the left. Sexual affirmation, freedom to explore, affirmative care. They don't buy that stuff. They bought it with environmentalism. They bought it with racial justice. They bought it with equity. They're not buying it with the sex. So I think that may have been just one bridge too far for the left to go. And you're seeing an enormous backlash. And if that's true, if I'm correct about this, this may spell the death knell for the American Maoist Revolution in the United States. I certainly pray that it does. Because
Yes,
we are
yes.
right on the verge of getting to a point where if we go past it, we will not be able to return for at least a generation. We're right up at the edge. We're looking over into the abyss right now. In the next 12 to 18 months, that's going to determine the next 20 to 40 years. And I'm hoping that this overreach by the transgender activist may be the one grenade that finally wakes us up and causes us to unify as a nation against the left.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
That's what I hope.
Yeah,
for.
it's guys like us too that are just fighting the fight every day. You know, there's more. There's a lot of us out there that I've been finding out over the years too. You know, I kind of thought, like, even Nikki and I both thought we were very alone in our beliefs and everything like that.
It was very lonely during the pandemic.
You
'cause I
know,
felt alone,
we
yeah.
thought, yeah, we thought that we were very alone, but then we start finding out there's more and more people just like us. You know, fighting that fight.
You know what I would tell people to do who have not yet done this? And I am one of the people who did this, and I'm so grateful that I did, is if you were of the silent majority of the conservatives, the rational thinkers, those who care about traditional values, Constitution, First Amendment, Second Amendment, all the amendments, if you're one of those people and you haven't yet gone public with your views, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Take a risk, because courage is in short supply right now. And courage is nothing other than taking a risk in defense of what you believe and what your values are. And you will pay a price. You will pay a price. You will lose a bit of money. You will perhaps lose your so-called friends. You hopefully won't get fired from your job, but it's possible. So you have to assess what risk you're willing to take. But to whatever degree you, not say comfortable, but you can tolerate, accept, you and your family, that risk, take that risk. Why? Not because you're a martyr, because you want to pay a price, but because once you do that, after you go through a few weeks of hell and you get a lot of nastiness in your life, what ends up happening is you then become a beacon for other people who are either public or not public about their views to come to you, because now they know that you are with them. And you will gain a whole new set of friends, colleagues, associates, perhaps sponsors, people who will pay you for your time, who didn't know about you because you were quiet. And the recompense you get, I guarantee you, will be far greater than what you lose over the long term.
There you go.
And you will feel better about yourself, and you will sleep better at night. So if you haven't done that yet, please do it. I lost 1/3 of my patients when I went public.
Really?
After 10 years of staying silent and just seething, I went public because I couldn't wait any longer, because I knew our country was at risk, my patients were at risk, and I began writing and speaking. About 1/3 of my patients left abruptly.
Really?
About 1/3. And within 6 months, I was turning patients away, new patients, because I had no space in my practice. And these were patients I really wanted to help and I could help, not the hopeless left that I didn't really want to help to begin with, and who weren't able to receive my help anyway because they were too lost. These are people, the new ones, who are struggling and fighting, and I want to help them. I feel good about helping them, and they want to be with me. They want me as their doctor. So I can tell you from a personal perspective that I am so glad and have no regrets about doing it, and I encourage you to do the same.
That's it, guys. Again, stand up for who you are, what you stand for, and you'll see people will come.
They will.
They will. That's fantastic. I love hearing stuff like that, Mark. Really, I really do. And I really respect you for doing that. You could have lost a lot of your whole practice, possibly. You never know.
I was investigated by the California Medical Board for it, for posting on social media 2 years ago that you should consider taking ivermectin as a prophylactic or a treatment option if you contract the Chinese Wuhan virus. And I cited a study on my social media page for that. They came after me and investigated me for medical misinformation. And an investigation lasted 9 months. They finally closed it out on January 26th of 2023 after 9 months.
Really?
I was worried they could have taken my license away.
Man.
This is the state of California Medical Board. So
Unbelievable.
I had to put that on the line.
Wow. Well, Mark, everything today was fantastic. I love everything you came to the table with. I'd like to have you on the show again.
Love to come back.
Talk to more about things, and I definitely want. I'll make sure that Nikki reads your book because I have a hard time
Yes.
reading books, but she's always
You
in
can
bed.
listen to the book.
Listen to it.
That's
You
true.
can play
that's
it in
true.
your car on your way to work.
Maybe she can read the book to me. Or just sitting anyhow.
It's a short book. You can read through the book in probably 4 to 6 hours.
Oh.
It's very dense.
Good.
But it's compact.
Very
It's
good.
not 300 pages. It's not the real Anthony Fauci, RFK Jr. 1,500
Yeah.
pages, 2 volumes, 700 pages of references. This book is very focused.
I can't
and
wait
it's
to
on the
check it
things we
out.
Talked about.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mark. I really do appreciate that. And again, Nikki is going to make sure that all your information is up on the
The description below.
description below. And then, Nikki, tell everybody where they can find us as well.
You can find Open Arms on Instagram, openarms.tv, on all platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Open Arms TV, and we're also on Twitter. So you can send us a tweet or a question, Open Arms, the letter DT. And then, again, we'll link all of Mark's social media down below, too. And where can we find you on social media? Do you have an Instagram account?
I do. It's also called Dissident MD. So is my Twitter, Dissident MD. So is my Substack, Dissident MD. And so is my website, Dissident MD. So
right.
all you need to
Stuff.
remember is Dissident MD, and you'll find me.
Easy stuff.
Okay.
Mark, again, thank you.
Brian.
Thank you, buddy, for coming on the show. I do appreciate it. I love when I saw you the first time. I love this today. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Everyone, that's our show for today. And always remember safety, family,
And the Second Amendment.
See you soon.